of this breaking news story that the U.S. is actually making joint attacks. They are working with Israel on these attacks.
Well, this is breaking news, and I'm going to try to turn my audio down here on my screen. All right, so you see by the graphic here, Iran under attack. Israel has launched strikes against Iran. Israel has launched strikes against Iran, and I got a breaking news alert. But then, just now, on Al Jazeera, the announcer said that the United States is launching strikes as well. So that's what I'm hearing right now. So the United States is going to launch strikes. Now, that's according to Al Jazeera. And here are photos. And I'll just make myself small and put this up, and I'll turn up the audio. I turned down the audio so I could talk, just so I could do a break-in. So Gloria Moraga with political news live, and I'll bring up the audio here and try to manage my audio better than I have in the past. Turning it up.
Between Trump and the Iranian regime. The other thing is that every evening in the news, the networks are offering some kind of interview with an Iranian, with, of course, his face covered, that is telling us about the atrocities, what is happening there. And Netanyahu is playing kind of a Robin Hood. He's coming now to save the Iranian people. And this is the big difference, because this is happening after the big, involvement of many Iranian people in the kind of revolution, and what the Iranian regime is doing to its people. So now Israel wants to appear as the peacemaker in the Middle East and as saving the Iranian people from the Ayatollahs and from their own leaders.
Akiva Eldar, thank you so much for joining us on Al Jazeera. To our viewers around the world, if you're just joining us, it is coming up to 7 GMT. That is 9 a.m. in Israel and about 10:30 a.m. in Tehran. And in the last hour, Israel has launched what it calls a preventative attack on Iran. Smoke and explosions are being reported in and around the Iranian capital of Tehran. The attack again began just in the past hour. In the last few minutes, a U.S. official has told Al Jazeera that the United States is now participating in those strikes. This is coming as the third round of talks on Iran's nuclear program just wrapped up in Geneva. U.S. President Donald Trump has said he was not pleased with this latest round of nuclear talks with Iran, but did say that he still wanted to reach a deal with Tehran. But now Israel has launched an attack on Iran before a deal is reached. Let's bring in Osama bin Javed in Geneva, who was covering those nuclear talks for us. So here we are, Osama. This is what many people feared, that there would be an attack if a deal wasn't reached.
Okay, or as they get their act together, because this is breaking news, and this is
Osama bin Javed in Geneva. Can you hear me?
News. I'm turning the audio down. I'm going to mute it a little bit, and I'll just fill you in, you folks. Iran is under attack. Israel has attacked Iran, and now we hear, according to Al Jazeera, who got it confirmed from a U.S. official, the United States has taken part in these attacks. So I'm on Al Jazeera, but I got the notice from the New York Times, and I went to The Guardian, and The Guardian is reporting it as well, and a number of sources. I'm watching Political Punk, and he's on, he goes on Twitter, whatever, Twitter, and he is pulling stuff up from Twitter feed and saying that, yes, this is happening. So here are the pictures. This is coming from Al Jazeera. And I'll make this bigger so you can see it better. These are the first strikes of Israel attacking Tehran. Israel attacking Iran right now. And I'm looking on the internet to see, and I'm on my phone as well to see who else is confirming that the United States has joined them. So I'm on, I can't do Twitter, but I will turn up the audio. You guys can listen to the audio and take a listen to what's going on right now. Hi, how are you? We've got Israel attacking Iran, my friend, and then we've got reports on multiple websites that the United States has joined Israel in attacking Iran. So Trump said earlier today that he was not happy with the negotiations for the negotiations for Iran to get rid of all of its nuclear arsenal, even though earlier we said we decimated the nuclear arsenal. It's still on the actual Pentagon website that we destroyed Iran's nuclear arsenal, that we've demolished it, decimated it. But yet now they're saying that we have to do this because they're building up their nuclear power again. Now, Iran has said, no, they're not. And so this is actually going on right now. I can turn my audio down and turn audio up. So we've got this breaking news right now. I'm on the Al Jazeera website because they've got all of these live pictures, but I'm on the BBC website as well. I'm watching it on this side, and they say, yeah, this is actually happening.
As the diplomacy was going on,
anchor. She's talking about Trump.
Presumably there will be some sort of retaliation from Iran. We don't know the extent of it. We don't know what it's going to look like. The U.S. would have been preparing for a retaliation.
And they have been, and we saw that in the last 24, 36 hours with the likes of the Israeli embassy the United States Embassy in Jerusalem ordering the evacuation of all but essential staff. That was a hint that there was something that was going on, that there was concern. And of course, they were saying, well, the talks are still continuing. This would happen in the normal course of escalating tensions, but it was certainly a significant moment. And of course, there will be concern that there will be strikes, not just against Israel, who said this attack was theirs, but now the United States and United States targets because they are saying that they are participating. We don't know the level of participation. We don't know if it was just intelligence. We don't know if there was some sort of logistics involved. But we know that the United States, as you say, Paulie, has a significant presence in the Middle East at the moment. It has been a huge build-up over the last number of months, and the concern was that the United States wasn't just putting its troops in the region to walk away, they were putting their troops in the region to carry out some sort of military strike. And of course, the US is buoyed by Operation Midnight Hammer, the operation in June, which Donald Trump insisted had obliterated Iran's nuclear program. It went incredibly well for the United States, but getting involved in something beyond a one and done, for want of a better phrase, would lead to significant risks for the United States and politically for Donald Trump.
Yeah, let's just show our viewers the military buildup in the region that you've been talking about there, Alan, as U.S. officials confirmed that U.S. strikes on Iran are underway after an initial strike by the Israelis. These attacks, again, coming weeks after the U.S. really built up its military in the region. The world's largest aircraft carrier, the U.S.
So
has been deployed. It left its naval base in Crete on Thursday and arrived in Israeli waters on Friday.
that's us.
The port's two nuclear reactors powered advanced aircraft launch systems, allowing it to operate up to 220 missions per day. It joins the Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, the USS Abraham Lincoln. That carrier operates up to 70 aircraft, including Fa-18 fighter jets and surveillance planes. Its nuclear propulsion system also allows long-term deployment. They're being escorted by guided missile cruisers and destroyers, giving it air defense strike and anti-submarine capabilities. So, Alan, a huge military posture in this region. The concern now, of course, is that if Iran strikes U.S. bases in the region in response, to what extent Washington would escalate.
Exactly, but they have the military hardware in the region to do it. They have put more in the area just in the last week or so. So the feeling always was that we were heading towards some sort of war. But as I said, there are political concerns here for Donald Trump. He campaigned on no stupid foreign wars, something that most of his MAGA base agrees with. So now to get involved in attacking Iran, which is half a world away, and constantly insist there is no intentions of developing nuclear weapons, that it's not heading in that direction, many in MAGA will be worried about what the United States is getting involved in. But not just MAGA, on Capitol Hill as well. There was talks of passing a War Powers Act, which would suggest that if there was to be any sort of extended conflict with the Iranians, then Donald Trump must go to Congress and seek approval. He and his team don't believe that is necessary, that under war powers they can take this action. But there will be a great deal of disquiet, and not just among Democrats, among Republicans as well, who are worried about the United States being dragged into yet another quagmire in the Middle East.
Yeah, it's very important to highlight again that the U.S. Congress has not been consulted about possible U.S. involvement in any attack on Iran. Alan, stay with us. I'm gonna
it was a question at first when this first started breaking and I decided to go live. The reports that I was getting were that Israel has attacked Iran. And then it came out that the BBC and the New York Times and Al Jazeera, which I'm live with Al Jazeera because they have the best video cameras, cameras aimed in Tehran or where the bomb sites are. And so that's why I'm there live. But they've all confirmed that Israel launched the earlier strikes and then the United States took over and started hitting them. Because I had read earlier today in an Israeli site that Israel is short on munitions right now. And I guess because they're spending all their time bombing Gaza. And so they're short of bombs. So that was why they wanted us to be there. So that's what's going on. And I'll keep quiet and turn up the audio because they've got a guy from Great Britain, I think, reporting, and he's pretty knowledgeable about what's going on there on the ground.
A written proposal to the United States negotiators.
They're talking about the negotiations, how we've had
in the US,
Jared frickin' Kushner there. I mean, what is his background in negotiating wars? I mean, he's got no diplomatic background except, he's a billionaire and he's Trump's grandson or son-in-law.
A nuclear weapon, not just for a limited time, but not forever. So it comes off the backdrop of all of this diplomatic push to try and de-escalate. But the Iranians were ready for this. And this is what they were telling us here in Geneva as well. One diplomatic source told us that, yes, we believe in diplomacy. We're here, unlike the United States, with all our advisors and experts, but we're ready for all other options. And one person who had spoken to the Iranian foreign minister's security detail told me that there appears to be a plan in place, a three-tier plan in place, that if Israel attacks Iran, they are going to reply back to Israel. They're going to attack Israel. And if that doesn't stop, then they are going to hit U.S. military assets in the region, especially the naval assets. And the third phase of that would be to hit U.S. military bases. That is according to one source close to the Iranian foreign minister. So it appears that there were wheels in motion in anticipation of this, but there was hope that this could be resolved on the table because the Iranians have showed that they don't want to make a nuclear weapon. They want to comply with the International Atomic Energy Agency, and they want to negotiate with the United States. But it appears that, as we've seen before 8 months ago, that the Iranians were brought to the negotiating table, and as the negotiations were going on, as this round concluded after multiple rounds here in Geneva, that they've gone back and attacked Tehran. So it is early days to see how the Iranians are going to retort back, but as the conversations I've had with various Iranian journalists and diplomats, it appears that Iran is poised to strike back.
And very important to highlight, as you say, that this is the exact same scenario that unfolded in June of 2025 when Iran was in the midst of negotiations. It got attacked back in June. And here we have a similar situation. And also, as you said, Osama, this happening as Oman's foreign minister is in the U.S., and as the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio himself, is due to travel to Israel on Monday. So you wonder whether there must have been some coordination, obviously, between the U.S. and Israel, because the Americans have said they're involved in this initial attack on Iran, but also perhaps some sort of an element of surprise here. Now the question being whether negotiations, whether in Geneva or elsewhere, or Vienna, as it was talked about next week, are those negotiations effectively over now with this attack on Iran by Israel and the United States?
Who knows?
Well, it will be very difficult to see how the track of negotiations can continue, because if Tehran is...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, I'll turn it down a little bit. I'm pretty sure we're not going to be having negotiations when we're bombing them. I'll leave Al Jazeera here, and I'll just click on to, this is the BBC, and I'll just read you. They're doing breaking news. I think they do have some audio that I could turn up. It says, let's just adjust. Israel says it has launched attack on Iran as explosions reported in Tehran, and then they have, the explosions there, and they're updating Israeli Defense Minister. It says, the story reads, his country has launched a preemptive attack. And then if you go down here and look, sirens have sounded across Israel. So that's the other thing that's going on. Our State Department has been telling Americans to come, if you don't have to be there in Israel, come home, and that's been going on for the last couple of days. It says here, Iran has made concessions in the talks, although Donald Trump had previously threatened Iran, and he said today, I posted a couple of videos on Trump talking as he was getting on the plane. He's not thrilled with the way discussions are going. Trump has ordered the largest U.S. military buildup in the Middle East since the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003, but has done little to explain why there could be the need to take military action now. So, I mean, that is the thing, you guys. What has changed? Okay, so we apparently bombed their nukes to obliteration. That post is still up on the Department of Defense website, and I'm still calling it Department of Defense because legally, I mean, officially, Congress has not changed the name. I mean, you just can't say this and make it so. I mean, they want it to be so. So whatever, I'm not big enough for anybody to care. So Iran, meanwhile, has vowed to respond to an attack with force. So why are they doing, George Bush, before he hit Iran, they did PR for like 2 freaking years and explained why they were doing it. Now, the reason they were doing it was wrong. I mean, they lied, or they didn't know what they were talking about, but still, at least they explained to the American people why you're doing this. And, for someone, Trump, who's supposed to be this, marketing magician, boy, they really are bad at communications. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has said the preemptive strike was to remove threats against the state of Israel. And then last June, Israel launched an attack on Iran, leading to a 12-day war. The U.S. eventually joined Israel in the conflict, targeting Iran's nuclear facilities. So we all remember that. And, Trump declared that it was very successful. And so that's the BBC website. And I was just reading just to confirm what's going on. Here's The Guardian, which is a little bit late because it's got, The Guardian's got Marco Rubio orders U.S. officials to stop making commentary on anything that would strain Iran attacks or Iran talks. So The Guardian is late. Here we go. So The Guardian does have it now. I refreshed. Here's the, forgive me while I adjust. Israel attacks Iran as blasts heard in Tehran. And the retaliatory strike. And then here is the same picture of that other people have. Trump advisors scramble to justify possible military intervention in Iran. Marco Rubio wants people to stop talking. Too late. And then let's just go to the New York Times, whatever you think about the Times. The Times says Israel says it has launched attacks on Iran. So see, at this point in time, it is Al Jazeera who has the best coverage right now. At least if I'm not going to go on Twitter, I'm looking at Political Punk to see if he's got anything on Twitter, any sound bites or anything, and he doesn't. He's talking about, they're talking about Iran too. I don't know. So here we'll go back to Al Jazeera, and here's the headline, and there it's refreshing. Here is this reporter reporting from Tehran, so I will turn it up.
Iran, or I understand, or I know even, that there was some time between the first explosions and the second wave of explosions, about half an hour. So we do not know if that's going to be a pattern and if we're going to see more attacks later today, even if Iran hasn't yet reacted or hasn't yet attacked back. Or this is going to be just one attack to see what's the reaction in Iran. The officials, the American officials, Israeli officials have been actually talking about this. Israel is starting first, but also we know that it has been a joint operation between the two countries. But the fact that Israel has been the first to announce that it has launched these attacks is very interesting. It corroborates what has been reported during the last few days, that the American-Israeli plan is that Israel attacks first, and if there is a huge reaction from Iran, then the Americans have to intervene to protect their ally Israel. And that's probably going to be the beginning of a much longer, much more protruded attack on Iran to either compel the Iranians to give up their nuclear program, or probably regime change. Lots of those things have been talking about. We don't know specifically. Still listening and waiting for more details from all the sides.
And waiting to see how Iran will respond. Of course, Mohammed Vali in Tehran for the moment. Thank you, Mohammed, describing panic and chaos on the streets of Tehran as Iran comes under attack from the U.S. and Israel. It was Israel first that announced that it had hit Iran. Explosions were heard in the Iranian capital, Tehran. Iranian media reporting that the attacks happened nationwide as Israel first announced launching these airstrikes. They are against Iran, and according to a U.S. official who's been speaking to the Reuters news agency, the strikes were launched by air and by sea, and several ministries in southern Tehran have been targeted. Our correspondent on the ground there bringing us the latest on the situation. We'll keep a close eye, of course, on what's happening inside Iran. But also earlier on Saturday morning, Israel carried out airstrikes in southern Lebanon. The Israeli army says it targeted Hezbollah military infrastructure in the Iqlim al-Tufa region. The attacks are the latest breach, of course, of a ceasefire, which is agreed between Lebanon and Israel in late 2024. Zaina Khodr is in Beirut for us. We've seen these Israeli attacks on Lebanon regularly in the last year since the ceasefire was agreed. But is this latest one related to what's happening in Iran right now, Zaina?
Well, it is not being seen as an isolated incident. The timing, roughly an hour before the Israeli military carried out what it called preventative strikes in Tehran, the Israeli Air Force carrying out a series of attacks in southern Lebanon in the Iqlim al-Tufa region. This is a mountainous region, a very strategic region in southern Lebanon. Yes, they've hit it time and time again over the past year or so, despite that ceasefire. But like I said, in the past few days, there's been an escalation, a pattern of escalation. On Thursday night, for example, the Israeli army carried out a wave of airstrikes in the east of the country in the Bekaa area, an area where the Israeli military believes is the operational base of Hezbollah, a place where Hezbollah keeps its strategic weapons, whether they are long-range weapons, precision-guided weapons, drone manufacturing facilities, weapons depots, and it believes Iqlim al-Tufa also is where Hezbollah has strategic weapons. So this escalation of attacks really has caused a lot of concern in Lebanon that the country could be dragged into a potential conflict, which is now happening between Israel, Iran, and the United States, because Hezbollah being Iran's strategic and ideological ally. So these attacks are being seen as preventive attacks to limit the possibility of Hezbollah responding if it chooses to do so, because that in itself is another question.
They're going to respond. They said they're going to respond.
Zaina, of course, Hezbollah has been considerably weakened since its conflict with Israel. How might it respond? Will it get involved if there's a prolonged conflict between Tehran, Iran, and Israel and the U.S.?
Yes, it has been a question on everyone's minds in Lebanon. Even Lebanon's top political leadership has been repeating time and time again, warning Hezbollah not to launch what it is calling a new adventure and drag the country into another conflict. But you said, and you pointed out, how Hezbollah has been badly weakened, suffering major blows in the last year or so. Israeli attacks continue against its leadership, against its weapons depots. And, you know, it's a very difficult decision for Hezbollah to get involved. Israeli intelligence assessments say that they believe Hezbollah still has an arsenal of missiles that it is able to use, but they will not pose any existential threat to Israel, a much more superior army. And Hezbollah also knows that if it does get involved in this conflict, it could trigger a harsh response by the Israeli army and its people, its constituency, its supporters. They will pay the price. Israel could carry out dozens of airstrikes in Beirut's southern suburbs, causing even more devastation, causing more displacement. There are still tens of thousands displaced by the late 2024 conflict. So very difficult decisions. A few weeks ago, Hezbollah's Secretary General said, and he was speaking during an event in solidarity with Iran, he said, as far as how we would act, those are the details. The battle itself will determine. We are expecting to hear from Hezbollah's Secretary General in a few hours' time. This was a scheduled address, but no doubt he will have to comment on the latest developments and the strikes on Iran.
Zaina Khodr in Beirut, thank you very much for now. We will, of course, check in regularly with you to find out the latest there from Lebanon. If you're just joining us on Al Jazeera, We're bringing you extensive coverage of this breaking news story. Israel and the United States have attacked Iran. This happened about an hour or so ago. Explosions were heard in the Iranian capital, Tehran, as well as in Isfahan, Qom, Karaj, and Kermanshah. Israel announced that it was launching a preemptive attack on Iran, and some 20 minutes later, the U.S. announced that it was also involved in that attack. Iranian media reporting that the attacks are happening nationwide as Israel launched these airstrikes, but now Tehran saying also that it's preparing for retaliation and that the response will be crushing. We have extensive coverage, as I said. Diplomatic editor James Bays is here with us on set. Ali Hashem, who's covered Iran extensively, is also with us. We have our chief U.S. correspondent in Washington, D.C., Alan Fisher, as well as Zina Hodder in Beirut. And various guests will be analyzing and reacting to the news as we get the latest developments. Let's bring in Alan Fisher in Washington for now. Alan, tell us what's the latest from Washington, D.C. The U.S. Confirming that it is also involved in this attack on Iran. What's the extent of its involvement?
Well, I've been texting with someone who surprisingly is awake at 2 in the morning because they also heard of the attacks on Tehran. They seem to suggest that they believe that the United States' involvement in this is towards decapitating the head of the Iranian regime. They say that from what they can understand, the attacks were concentrated in areas where the supreme leader may well be living. And so the intention was to try and take out the head of the regime and then see what would happen afterwards. Now, many countries have warned the United States about an extended effort to try and force regime change in Iran. They wanted to know what was the plan for the day after and the day after that and the day after that, simply because you couldn't guarantee that if you removed the supreme leader, that necessarily what would happen would that a pro-Western, pro-United States government form in his absence. And so there could be a great deal of bloodshed in the aftermath, and they were concerned that that would leak over borders, that that would cause instability across the region, and they would be dragged into a regional war of some description. Now, as I say, that's just someone who is an analyst who understands these things far better than I do, but they suggest that this was a move at decapitation, but it would certainly fit in with some of the ideas that have been floated recently, not least by Lindsey Graham, who was travelling with Donald Trump on Friday, who has said often that he would like to see the supreme leader being replaced. So it may well be that the United States' involvement in this was limited to intelligence, but given the size of the US military buildup in the region, there's every possibility that American hardware, American service personnel was also used.
Alan, thank you for now. Ali Hashem, you've covered Iran extensively. If, as Alan said, the objective of this particular attack is to decapitate the head of the Iranian regime, the supreme leader, how difficult of a mission is that?
Well, it's clear from the locations where we saw these attacks are on that the main objective is not just decapitation, but even
We're prepared for such a scenario.
Now, just in case there is a second plan and a third plan and a fourth plan, and this is what we've been hearing from the Iranians, that there are several contingency plans, given the fact they've already seen this. This is a deja vu moment that they've saw.
All right, so what they're saying now is that, I'll turn it down a little bit, is that this is, you know, Benjamin Netanyahu came to the United States and visited with Trump in secret. I mean, it wasn't in secret, but they didn't talk about anything. They didn't have an availability. They released a photo, but it was like an old photo of the two of them. And obviously, this is what they talked about. And all this whole thing about how we're there discussing and having negotiations is obviously, you know, a smokescreen, a cover-up, because they had all these these ships in place to launch this attack. And it's not just a military strike, like Israel said, to you know, preemptive strikes to protect themselves. And it's not to protect us, because we're not there. This is about protecting Israel. And
missiles
and
that
spending
is
our
made
money,
so that
to do
even
this.
if the
Anyway,
head is gone, it's going
that's
to be
a whole nother story.
it's
But,
not going to be an immediate
the
collapse,
goal
or
is
it will
regime
collapse
change.
directly.
The
An
goal
Iranian
is to get
official
rid
now
of the
saying that
leaders
Tehran
there.
is preparing
And
for
if that's
retaliation,
the goal,
Ali, and that the response will be
then
crushing.
That means a
What
much
might the response
longer
look like?
Well, we know
military
the main
involvement
asset the Iranians
than,
have is their ballistic missiles.
than-
And actually,
than
this
just
is
a couple
one
of
of the issues
bombs
that the Americans
being
and the
launched.
Israelis
Yeah.
wanted on the table.
And then
that
the Iranian
means
didn't want it
Congress
on
That's
the
has to
absolutely.
be
Because they
involved.
knew that the moment
Congress
they are going
has
to give
to
up their
fund the
ballistic
war,
missiles,
not
then
Donald
they are
Trump,
going to be
and not
open for any
his
attack.
regime
And also,
just do whatever he
besides
wants
that,
with
they
Benjamin
have their own
Netanyahu.
drone program
And the
that
American people
that
need to
was
know what the
tested
goals
in
are
Ukraine,
here.
the war in Ukraine by
Because
the,
this is
by
our
the
money.
Russians. So these are
I
two
mean, I hate
main
to always go back to the
military
money thing,
assets that they might
but,
be
I mean,
using.
it used to
Also,
matter.
there is a
It used to
possibility
matter
that they might be activating
what this
the
was
region.
costing and
Their
why
own
and why it
presence
was
in the
important
region.
for America to do
Proxies in the
this.
region like the Hezbollah and the Houthis in Yemen, of course. But
I don't
Regardless
see it.
of the situation
So,
right now of Hezbollah or the Iraqis or the
you know,
Houthis,
let's
because
just go back
each
to
has
the
their
whole,
own local
situation,
calculations.
with
But now,
them
if this is
going
heading
in and
towards an
arresting
existential threat
the leader
for
of,
the Islamic Republic, then this
of
whole axis
Argentina.
is under existential
how,
threat. So it depends
the
how this
same
is going
regime
to move on.
is still
right,
there.
James Bays, this U.S.-Israel attack
you
on
know,
Iran coming as there was
Hi,
cautious
Victor.
optimism that diplomacy
I
could
don't
work. We saw the
understand,
third round of
what the
negotiations in
goal is.
Geneva.
I don't
The Omani
understand
foreign
what
minister in Washington saying that he
the
was
men who
optimistic that they could come up with some
allegedly,
sort of a deal. And
ended
even Donald
wars,
Trump
which he
saying that
didn't, by the way,
even if
that's
he
all
wasn't
a
happy
lie
with
and
what
some
the
sort of
outcome of the
delusional,
talks in Geneva
thing that
was,
he makes up in his
he still
brain,
hoped that there could be a deal. And yet here we are,
is doing this.
an attack
Is doing
on Iran.
something
Where does that leave
that
diplomacy
a
and the
regime
negotiations?
change?
And I think those comments from the
I mean,
Oman
so
Foreign
it's
Minister
not
are very
about-
important.
it has
because
nothing
that
to
interview
do
he
with
gave
the-
just a few
with the
hours
nuclear
ago
weapons.
in
That's
the
all
US, and he
just
doesn't
another
talk it very
lie.
much
Right.
in public,
It's-
saying we've
they
made a
wanna
breakthrough
change
in
who's in
these
charge
talks.
there?
They're no longer going to
Because
stockpile
apparently
enriched uranium. This is something that was
guy,
never in the previous JCPOA, the Obama deal of
the king,
2015. And you have
he
that
lives in Israel, the
soundbite, which will be
deposed
played
king
on breakfast
lives
shows in a few hours' time in the
Prince or
US
whomever.
at the same time as they've
forgive
launched
me
this
for not
attack.
being
And I
up
think
on
there
all
is
the
a problem
names.
here for Donald
You
Trump.
know, is in
He has
Israel
not
now, and he wants to go
prepared
back.
the world,
So they want
and
to put
particularly
him
his
back.
public,
Well, there are a lot
for
of people
war.
in
This is the biggest
Iran who
armada
don't
that's been
want that.
gathered
Quite
in
a
the
few
Middle
people.
East since
So what are we doing?
2003
Why are
and
we
the
doing
attack
this?
then. Well, I remember 2003. We had the war, the invasion of
I just,
Afghanistan. and
it's just
from
infuriating
days after that, he was
to me
preparing the ground,
as
George W.
a
Bush, for
political
the
reporter and as
attack
someone
on
who covered
Iraq. They were
Congress
getting the American people
and,
ready.
who
Go all the way
saw
back
a number
35
of
years ago,
conflicts
1990,
when I was a
and the
reporter
war
there,
again.
and how you go
Americans
through
attacking
the
Iraq. They
steps.
built a
You don't just
42-nation
do whatever
coalition.
you want.
Nothing like that. In fact, I think that many Americans, when they
You
hear about this in the
inform
morning,
Congress,
when they
and-
wake
and
up in a
not
few
just
hours'
Lindsey
time,
Graham.
they're going to be splattering on their cornflakes as they
Graham.
hear what's happened.
Well, I
mean, these
understand
old
that the
stinky
U.S.
men.
President Donald Trump has just posted on Truth Social about
right, you
this
know,
attack on
maybe
Iran.
they're
Alan
not
Fisher
stinky,
in Washington. What is the
they're
president saying?
All right, and
Yeah,
we
well,
want to know
I'm
what's
listening to it
going
now,
on.
as you can probably hear. This has been on Truth Social just in the last couple of minutes. What he says is that this is an operation by the United States targeting
Trump's
the
voice in
government
the
in
background. I'm gonna
Iran.
turn it up.
At the end of the 8-minute message or so, he says that this is the time for the people in Iran to take control of their government, that they should move immediately and not let this opportunity pass. I can play a bit more of it as we try to find out exactly what was involved in the U.S. operation.
In 1983, Iran's proxies carried out
Trump talking.
Marine barracks bombing in Beirut.
He is
that
bringing up
killed
history about the
241
operation in
American
1983 when a number of
military
U.S. Marines were killed in
2000,
Beirut.
they knew
He's
and
now
were
saying that
probably involved with the attack on the USS Cole.
he's also
died.
talking about the USS Cole, which
Iranian
often was
forces killed and maimed
attributed
hundreds of
to
American service
Al
members in
Qaeda.
Iraq.
So
The
Donald Trump is laying out the case for why he is involved in military operations against Iran, why
Now
the
he
United
lays it
States
out.
has decided to take this action. Clearly, he sees this as justified. There will be questions about why he didn't seek congressional approval before there was widespread military action. At this point, we don't know whether he even consulted with the so-called Group of 8, which are 4 leaders from either side on Capitol Hill on the main committees, to let them know that this this was happening. He has bypassed that in the past, suggesting that often there are leaks for this, but confirmation from Donald Trump that this is a sustained military operation that has now been launched in Iran. There was speculation people telling me that this could be one and done. From the language that Donald Trump is using in this Truth Social post, it would suggest that that is not the case, that this is a long-term operation. And we see now why there was such a concentrated military build-up in the region. It was to allow the United States to carry out an operation of this kind.
The message, the audio message you just played, as you said, is one from President Donald Trump, Alan, on Truth Social, an 8-minute audio message, I understand, some of which you've played for us. We could hear a little bit of it. It'll be very interesting, again, to hear more of what he said there. Interesting that he said that this was a U.S.-led operation, even though the initial attack was announced by the Israelis.
Yeah, it's actually a video message. It was recorded in Mar-a-Lago, where he's spending the weekend. He's attending a dinner this evening for his MAGA Inc. group. He's talking a great deal about Iran's proxies, the likes of Hamas, which may explain why we're seeing the attacks in southern Lebanon over the last couple of hours by the Israelis against what they describe as Hezbollah targets in that region. But Donald Trump saying that no other US president has taken this sort of action against Iran. It was only him that did it. That, of course, is the split personality almost of Donald Trump, who boasts about solving somewhere in the region of 8 wars, but then has launched attacks against a number of countries. And this is the second time in, what, 6-7 months that he's launched an attack on Iran. And of course, he's making the point that this was an attack particularly to stop Iran getting a nuclear weapon. He's talking now about Midnight Hammer. I'm listening to this as I'm playing it out to you, obviously, and trying to decipher exactly what he's saying.
We'll let you listen to it.
He talked about Midnight Hammer.
Yeah, we'll let you go and listen to it and come back to you when you get more. In the meantime, we are showing our viewers here live pictures of the skies over Tel Aviv, and there's been an explosion in Tel Aviv in just the last few minutes. We saw just a few seconds ago on the right-hand side of the screen, if you can go back to it a little bit, smoke, black smoke billowing there over the sky in Tel Aviv. Israel, as it announced the attack on Iran, also declared a state of emergency and closed its airspace. It protectively sounded air raid sirens across the country, preparing for any missiles launch in a retaliation for its attack on Iran. Akiva Eldar is joining us from Tel Aviv. He's a political analyst, a regular contributor to Al Jazeera. Akiva, can you tell us right now, if you're able to, what's happening in Tel Aviv? Because we've seen an explosion there, it seems, in just the last few minutes.
Well, since the alarm came up this morning, the streets are empty. It's Shabbat, so very slow transportation, and people are at home. They were advised to stay close to the sealed rooms and to the shelters. Actually, in the last few years, people in Tel Aviv got used to it. You can still see in Tel Aviv areas where there are rebels from the last Iranian-Israeli war. So unfortunately, it became a routine for many Israelis, and there are many others who were fed up and left the country. These are the professionals, people from the high-tech industry, professionals in the academics. Yeah, you can hear more sirens in the streets, but it's kind of business as usual in Israel. A war in Israel at this time, especially with Iran, is a solution, is not a problem. People want war rather than settlement between Israel and Iran, as well as with the Palestinian. This leadership needs this war. We are deeply into election campaign, and in the next few weeks, maybe months until the elections that may take place as soon as June.
All right, Akiva, let me just ask you this, because we've heard now from President Trump in just the last few minutes who's posted a video message on his Truth Social saying that the U.S. military has now begun major combat operations in Iran, suggesting that this is not going to be just a one-off attack, but perhaps a long-drawn conflict. Israel is already involved in Gaza. Even if there's a ceasefire there, there's still effectively a war going on in Gaza. Is Israel prepared to be fighting right now on another front? Are Israelis prepared to be dragged into another conflict?
Yeah, the majority of the Israeli public, the Jewish Israeli, believes that there is no other way, that we are doomed to live on our sword and wait for the Messiah. Especially the young voters who actually were born into this situation. They know only Netanyahu and his agenda. And the word peace is hardly heard in the public discourse. And we see in the public polls that a diplomatic settlement between the US and the Iranian was a nightmare for many people. This was the message that is coming from the highest echelons, including the Israeli military. Israel is Sparta, and in Sparta you get used to this. So we don't believe that there is an alternative. For Netanyahu to alter the discourse from the massacre in Gaza and the thousands.
All right, so this is pretty much he's labeled a Israeli analyst, but he's pretty warmongering to this gal in Northern California. And I, as a political reporter working in Washington, I actually was assigned to the Pentagon and have,
Akiva, your sound
from
is
afar,
there,
been at the Pentagon
during
a couple of wars, a couple of conflicts. Trump has spoken. I was going to put it up, but I could hear some of his message. Al Jazeera, who I'm here with right now, they are they're going to get the Trump message and put it up. But it sounded like Trump. It was him talking about the different conflicts and.
Which also, as you know,
oh, here he is. All right, I'll just be quiet and turn this up.
Has been used to oppress the protesters. So those are the kinds of things that I would expect to see would be the options the president will be looking at going after if the Iranians didn't negotiate. I also don't think his objective would be an all-out.
Okay, apologies for that. We will try to sort out that clip from President Trump, which he posted on his Truth Social just a short while ago, confirming in the beginning of operations against Iran. President Trump says these are major combat operations. We've seen strikes on Iran in the last 2 hours or so, including on the capital, Tehran. Let's go to Mohammed Vowed, who's in the Iranian capital for us. Mohammed, bring us the latest from where you are. What is the situation? What's been targeted? And any information that you have on this would be appreciated.
Sorry, I will just adjust my position. Yes, we haven't been hearing much from the government side, but police has just issued a statement saying that although there is a major cyber attack on Iranian site, things are under control and they are managing the situation. So those explosions took place at 9:45 this morning, and there were 2 waves at least that we heard here in Tehran, with an interval of about 40 minutes in between. We don't know whether this is going to continue throughout the day, and probably we have just heard, since we have just heard from President Trump that it is going to be probably a sustained campaign. So, I mean, more is expected.
Sustained?
The targets are several. Some of them are in Tehran, including the Pastor district, which is where some of the strategic locations, their government sites are there, including the presidential palace. But we don't have any confirmation that anybody was hurt, particularly high-ranking officials. There are reports of people being evacuated, wounded people evacuated from the Pastor area. Also, the airport of Mehrabad, The second most important
they're trying to
airport
take
in
out.
Iran, which is here in Tehran, has been
They're trying for a
targeted.
regime change. Israel
Several
and the United
states
States
also were hit.
are trying for a
And we have
regime
reports
change. So
from,
they were hitting
Iran,
the
France
palace.
news
They were
agency
hitting
about
areas where
other
they
cities,
think
including Qom, which is
the
not far
Ayatollah
from
might be
Tehran, and
sheltering in
also,
place. But
Isfahan
you know
in the center
what
of
we've
the
been
country.
talking about this. Remember, Marco Rubio said,
and,
"Stop talking about this stuff."
These cities have been,
I mean, everyone's been
targeted by
talking about it.
explosions, by,
So,
missiles,
of
particularly.
course, he's not
They
going to
said
be there.
missiles.
Of course,
We know
he's not
that
going to
it is a
stay
joint
where
operation
they
between
think he might
Israel and the
be.
United States. Lots
Okay,
of
well, I could be
reports
wrong.
coming from Israel about
Waiting for
places
Trump,
targeted
it
or
sounded
probably
like blah,
people
blah, blah,
targeted,
the
but
same old
until now
stuff.
we are in a total blackout with regards to official reports from the Tehran government, for
Right,
Iran
I'm gonna go
government,
to,
if there is anybody hurt. And also
I'm gonna
we're
turn
hearing
this
that
down and go
the revolutionary the guide of the revolution, the supreme leader of the revolution, Khamenei, is not in Tehran. He has been transferred to a secure
New York
location.
Times.
As I mentioned earlier, there is a little bit of panic in the streets. There is a little bit of traffic jams, so people are really apprehending
See if
and
they've
feeling
got
that this
Trump.
might get worse. Until now, the only report I said is from the
Here's the
police saying
headline
that the
in the New York
situation is
Times.
under control. And we don't know whether the government here is deciding on major
US and
reaction.
Israel
We've heard
strike
about that
Iran.
explosion in Tel Aviv.
What are
But
we
people
thinking?
Are,
I mean,
listening
honestly,
and
you guys,
expecting more.
this is
regarding
like
this.
we don't even have
explosion in Tel
money
Aviv,
right now
which we
for
saw,
the
is there any indication
air-
that Iran
not
is
the air
behind
traffic
that?
controllers, the other-
Presumably, the Iranians would have prepared for this
TSA.
attack and also prepared a response
I mean,
to any attack on their soil.
Oh, I love this.
Well,
Look,
we've been hearing
this is
the,
a little
Iranian
side story.
officials
An
over the
attack
last
on
few days
Iran
saying
carries
that they are
risks
ready
for
peace, but
U.S.
also ready for
experts say.
war, and that there's going to be
Multiple
a reaction equal to
explosions
the action, and that this time around
over
there is
Tehran.
not going to be
And I'm
any
looking for
compromise
the,
with regards to the defense of
Orange
Iran, and also
Walrus's,
to sending messages to its
I mean,
enemies.
this was
that
really good
anything,
news,
any
you guys.
attack
I
on
mean, it was
Iran will
really
be
good news.
reciprocated. So that's why we can
This
expect
is why
that
I love
probably
some
Iran has been
nerds.
behind
I mean,
this
I
attack,
don't
but
love
we
any
don't
of
have
the
any
billionaire
official reports.
nerds,
Remember
but-
that there is an internet blackout where we are now, and we're not really getting all the updates in time.
Anthropic's not going to let Pete Hegseth have
Okay,
the.
thank you for now.
the robots.
Mohammed Val in Tehran there. We have now
Okay, here we go.
that
Here's
clip
Trump.
of President Donald Trump announcing and confirming
We're gonna listen to this
operations
sound,
on
okay?
Iran. Let's listen to him.
A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people. Its menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas, and our allies throughout the world. For 47 years, the Iranian regime has chanted death to America and waged an unending campaign of bloodshed and mass murder, targeting the United States, our troops, and the innocent people in many, many countries. Among the regime's very first acts was to back a violent takeover of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, holding dozens of American 144 days. In 1983, Iran's proxies carried out the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut that killed 241 American military personnel. In 2000, they knew and were probably involved with the attack on the USS Cole. Many died. Iranian forces killed and maimed hundreds of American service members in Iraq. The regime's proxies have continued to have soaked the earth with blood and guts. And it was Iran's proxy, Hamas, that launched the monstrous October 7th attacks on Israel, slaughtering more than 1,000 innocent people, including 46 Americans, while taking 12 of our citizens hostage. It was brutal, something like the world has never seen before. Iran is the world's #1 state sponsor of terror, and just recently killed tens of thousands of its own citizens on the street as they protested. It has always been the policy of the United States, in particular, my administration, that this terrorist regime can never have a nuclear weapon. I'll say it again, they can never have a nuclear weapon. That is why in Operation Midnight Hammer last June, We obliterated the regime's nuclear program at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan.
Then why do we have to
After
do
that
this?
attack, we warned them never to resume their malicious pursuit of nuclear weapons, and we sought repeatedly to make a deal. We tried. They wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. Again, they wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. They didn't know what was happening. They just wanted to practice evil. But Iran refused, just as it has for decades and decades. Allies in Europe are troops stationed overseas and could soon reach the American homeland. Just imagine how emboldened this regime would be if they ever had and actually were armed with nuclear weapons as a means to deliver their message. For these reasons, the United States military is undertaking a massive and ongoing operation to prevent this very wicked, radical dictatorship from threatening America and our core national security interests. We are going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. It will be totally, again, obliterated. We're going to annihilate their Navy. We're going to ensure that the region's terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region or the world and attack our forces and no longer use their IEDs or roadside bombs, as they are sometimes called, to so gravely wound and kill thousands and thousands of people, including many Americans. And we will ensure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon. It's a very simple message. They will never have a nuclear weapon. This regime will soon learn that no one should challenge the strength and might of the United States Armed Forces. I built and rebuilt our military in my first administration, and there is no military on earth even close to its power, strength, or sophistication. My administration has taken every possible step to minimize the risk to U.S. personnel in the region. Even so, and I do not make this statement lightly, the Iranian regime seeks to kill. The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost, and we may have casualties. That often happens in war. But we're doing this not for now. We're doing this for the future, and it is a noble mission. We pray for every service member as they selflessly risk their lives to ensure that Americans and our children will never be threatened by a nuclear-armed Iran. We ask God to protect all of our heroes in harm's way, and we trust that, with his help, the men and women of the armed forces will prevail. We have the greatest in the world, and they will prevail. To the members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, the armed forces, and all of the police, I say tonight that you must lay down your weapons and have complete immunity, or, in the alternative, face certain death. So, lay down your arms. You will be treated fairly with total immunity, or you will face certain death. Finally, to the great, proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. For many years, you have asked for America's help, but you never got it. No president was willing to do what I am willing to do tonight. Now you have a president who is giving you what you want. So let's see how you respond. America is backing you with overwhelming strength and devastating force. Now is the time to seize control of your destiny and to unleash the prosperous and glorious future that is close within your reach. This is the moment for action. Do not let it pass. May God bless the brave men and women of America's armed forces. May God bless the United States of America. May God bless you all. Thank you.
There you have it. U.S. President Donald Trump announcing the U.S. has begun major combat operations in Iran after Israel said earlier that it had launched missile attacks against Iran. President Trump there making a number of statements.
Oh, my God. The dude, first of all, he's got a white hat on. I mean, honestly, you guys, this is not good. She's going to interview this guy who seems to be pretty knowledgeable about what's going on. He's the guy that kept trying to break in with Trump. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it up. Wow. No, I mean, he's launching a major attack. He's encouraging the people of Iran to rise up, to take this opportunity to overthrow the government, which is... you know, Iran's got the very, very powerful, they've got an unbelievable military. All right. I was doing research on it the other day. It's like they have the strongest, the biggest army in the Middle East. Biggest army in the Middle East. And Trump is encouraging the people to take this opportunity. So, what are we doing? What are we doing? And why is he doing this without just some input from Congress? A, I mean, that's required by law. But B, I mean, you've got stupid Lindsey Graham saying, yes, stupid. I called him stupid. Oh, we need to make regime change. It's like, okay, that's not your decision. We, the people, are responsible for Congress. Congress is supposed to listen to us. What do we want to do? And then Congress is supposed to do it. That's the way it's supposed to work. We're not, a dictatorship, even though Trump doesn't know it. So, yeah, I'm a little peeved. I'm peevish. So I'll turn it up and see what this dude has to say about what's going on there. Because I want to know what's going on there. And what are our European... We don't have European allies anymore. We've got Netanyahu. Okay, I've got... All right, I'll tell you what I have. I have a cat. I have a dog who's laying right by my computer. And I have a cat who likes to bother the dog, who went down by where the dog was at the computer and bumped the wire that I've had problems with my computer cords. And I had to pay, like, with the tariffs, a fortune to get a computer cord. And, like, my hair, like, yeah, we're at war, so my hair looks like this. I'm going to turn this dude up.
Of an attack. Of course, there'll be allies in the region who'll be concerned, particularly about the idea of regime change. We remember, if you go back to the original Iranian revolution in the 70s, there was a real possibility for a short period of time after Ayatollah Khomeini returned to the country that people described as radical Islamists may well take over the country. They were eventually defeated. But there is no guarantee there is a clear path for whoever may take over the Iranian government now. It throws up all sorts of levels of uncertainty, something Donald Trump has criticised others for, particularly when it came to the war in Iraq, and it appears he's now walking into a similar situation himself.
Okay, Alan, thank you very much. Alan Fisher, our Chief U.S. correspondent in Washington there. It's just past 8 GMT. If you're just joining us on Al Jazeera, extensive coverage of the U.S. and Israel attacking Iran continues. In just the last few minutes, U.S. President Donald Trump has confirmed that the U.S. has begun major combat operations in Iran. He says the objective is to defend the American people by eliminating what he calls imminent threats from the Iranian regime. The attacks on Iran began on the capital, Tehran, but we understand that they're now also taking place in cities across the nation. Iranian airspace has been shut and mobile services have been cut. An Iranian official has said that the country will retaliate and that the response, quote, will be crushing. Now, aside from Tehran, as I've said, there have been attacks in several other cities, including the holy city of Qom, Karaj near the capital Tehran, Isfahan also in central Iran, Tabriz in the northwest, and Kermanshah and Ilam both in the west towards the border with Iraq. Well, we have a team of correspondents in Washington, D.C., in Jordan's capital, Amman, in Geneva, where the U.S.-Iran talks recently took place, in Ramallah as well. We also have analysts and correspondents in Iranian capital. Let's start with here our guests in the studio, Ali Hashim, who's covered Iran extensively, and Mohanad Seloum from the Doha Institute of Graduate Studies. Ali, first of all, let me come to you because I know you're talking to your contacts in Tehran. What are they telling you about the whereabouts of the Iranian leadership?
Well, just talking to a close aide to the Iranian president right now, he told us that the president wasn't harmed by the first wave of attacks. Now,
that is President Masoud Pezeshkian.
President Masoud Pezeshkian. Now, with respect to the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, there's no information about his whereabouts, but since, after the attack, there were reports in Tehran that he wasn't there, he wasn't in the complex. And given the fact this is a deja vu moment, it would be very unlikely that these officials, especially that high, will be in expected areas in their premises or in their headquarters. So for now, what we know is that the president isn't harmed. The Supreme Leader probably wasn't in the complex, but this attack, it's clear, it was mainly aimed at decapitating.
Right, because of the targets, right? The targets in the Iranian capital included official buildings.
Yeah, I mean, when they're hitting Pastor is where the presidency is, it's where the Supreme National Council is, it's close to the assembly, the experts' assembly. It's also on the other side, Jamhuri Islami, towards the south from there, the house of the Supreme Leader. And hitting towards the east, there's the IRGC command. So it's clear that these are kind of clear attacks on the heads, on the command and control. How much this was successful, wasn't it successful?
It's too early to tell.
Yeah, it's too early to tell.
Mohanad Seloum, let me come to you. What did you make of what we heard from President Trump confirming this major operation, saying that the objective is to destroy Iran's missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground, but interestingly also telling Iranians in that statement that the hour of your freedom is at hand. When we're finished, take over your government. A message to the Iranian people as well.
Well, this is a regime change war. This is not about missiles. This is not about the nuclear system anymore. No, the message coming from DC is that we are going to change the regime. And talking about the types of targets, I mean, for a security analyst, for a security scholar like me, I don't think Pezeshkian or any senior official would be in these buildings.
Yeah.
These attacks
given the build-up we've seen and the threats we've heard from the Trump administration in the last few months.
And the US knows that very well. So what they're doing, basically, this is symbolic. This is a message to the Iranian people that if you like, these buildings, the places where these people were ruling you, we have destroyed them. We have targeted them, and they are running. They're on the run. So it's your time to take over these places and rule your country. This is one side of the story,
but
obviously.
The Iranian leadership would have prepared for such a scenario. As Ali said, they would have had a plan B, a plan C, a plan D even for such a situation.
Definitely.
Would they have not?
So that is one side of the story. I was about to say the other side of the story is the Iranian regime. Obviously, they have a plan for this. They knew what is coming. And also, they have learned so many lessons from what happened in Iraq. And so what they're going to do is basically have a first line of command, second line of command, third line of command. But if we are here in the studio talking about this, obviously the US has thought this through as well. So what is going on here is the US is attacking Iran with a plan that has been in a preparation for months. They have the capabilities, they have the almost complete control of the skies. They have the satellites, the technology, everything. And as we hear that Iran is under cyber attack, maybe it's something else, maybe something bigger that they have used.
Well, the attacks that we understand came from both the air and the sea.
Yes, and also ballistic missiles coming from Israel. So it's not only air and sea, also ballistic missiles coming from Israel, because I saw footage of these missiles crossing over Syria, and they were videoed by people, just bystanders. So what we are looking here is Iran looking at this as an existential threat, and they will definitely respond.
All right. Briefly, Ali, on President Trump's message specifically to the Iranian people, telling them this is the hour of their freedom and that they should take over their government. How will they receive that message, Iranian people? Of course, many of them, as we saw in the last month or so, came out on the streets to protest against their government and their government's policies. But will they welcome this U.S. intervention?
People there don't believe Donald Trump.
I heard in
All right,
President Trump's
because
speech, one towards
he's
the
lied to
armed
us
forces,
about
calling on
everything.
them to
I
lay
mean
the
everything.
the arms,
He wasn't going to
and
get
they
into
will be
any
immune.
more wars.
And the other one is towards
He was
the people.
going
Now,
to fix
given
prices
the,
on day
experience of
one.
the last war,
Now
the June
we
war,
hear
and
it's
of course, there
official.
are different contexts for this and that.
Inflation has gone
These are 92
more
million
than
people.
expected.
Of course, there are some people who are
and
happy
on
with
and
this.
on
and of
on.
course, there are some
I'm only
people
going
who are
to
ready to
deport
defend
the
the
worst
system.
of the worst
There's
criminals.
a
They're
very
building
solid
prisons
block,
for
ideological
children.
block in this
You know,
country.
now
and there's
he's
also
telling these people.
the,
I
you
mean,
know,
he doesn't
those
know what
who
he's
want
doing.
to their lives
We have
to be
our
safe.
own problems here that we need to
depends
address,
on who
like,
this
for
message
instance,
is falling
air
on.
safety.
Right.
And at the same time,
Pentagon
this is
shooting down
a very
missiles
securitized
by
country.
mistake.
In the
They're
last war,
shooting
we
down
saw how
drones over
they were
Texas.
taking care of the
And,
situation on the ground, the checkpoints, how things were going
and
on.
I
So
don't
I think
want
these
to
layers are
ever
being
disparage
dealt with, but
human
also
life.
it depends
But
on the sleeper cells on the
just
ground.
bringing
We
all the
heard
ships
a few
there,
days
how
ago
much
about
is this
an
costing?
attack close
Because
to the
we have a
leaders'
deficit here
headquarters from MEK.
that nobody
so
ever
is there
seems to
something
worry
that's
about.
going to happen on the ground?
So, I
in
mean, I could just
parallel
go on
with
and
what's
on and on about
happening
how
from the sky?
wrong this
This
is
the
on
question.
every level.
Indeed. Let's check in with
This
Mohammed
is
Farah,
not our
correspondent
fight.
who's on the ground
This
in
is
Tehran
not our
for us.
fight.
Mohammed, bring us up to
And
speed
I
with the
don't know
situation
what
there. What is the latest
Israel
you're
or-
hearing
no,
and
I
seeing
didn't even want to say
with these
Israel.
attacks on
I'm
Iran?
just going to say Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yes, fully.
is
Just a while
selling
ago, we have
Trump.
been speculating about
And,
whether this is a one-off for now
Lindsey
and
Graham.
waiting for the reaction
and,
from Iran
you
and
know,
so
they're
on. But
taking
just
over
a few
all of
minutes ago,
media
we have
everywhere.
reports
So
talking
that
about a
means
new
all the rest of us
explosion
are gonna have to
or
work
new
twice as hard
signs of
as
explosions
we
in the
usually do
city
just
of
to bring
Dizbul.
facts to all
Dizbul
y'all.
is in the
right, here's, this
southwest
dude.
of
He's
Iran.
pretty good. I'm gonna
We
turn
have
it up.
that's
And have
almost
more
confirmed that
Diet
these
Coke.
attacks are continuous throughout the day. We have talked a bit earlier about Kermanshah in the west, about Qum near Tehran to the south of it, about Isfahan to the center. Not clear what targets are specifically meant to be destroyed there, but the Israelis talking about, several targets, and the Americans also talking about a sustained campaign to now clearly remove the missile capabilities of Iran. That's going to take a lot of time. Iran has probably thousands of those missiles scattered across the country, hidden in many areas. So it's clearly going to take a lot of time to take them out. We have also reports that some of the schools in Tehran have been closed for the moment. There has been a cyber attack on the news agency, the main news agency, Tasnim, and now it is back on air. But also, mostly speaking, I mean, we don't have functioning internet here, so that's a major situation in Tehran. A lot of confusion.
And
people
I
are unable to
appreciate,
communicate.
Yeah, I appreciate, Mohammed, that it's
the
difficult to get
updates.
information because of the internet connection and so on. We are hearing reports that Iran has begun launching missiles towards Israel. Is that something you're able to confirm to us?
No, not so far. We can't confirm that because until now, as I said earlier, there is no official report from the Iranian government. We have semi-official sources like Irene, like IRNA, and so on. They are talking about what is going on, and Iran has always, during the last few days, promised vehemently that it is going to react to any attack on its territory. So it's not impossible, it's not improbable or illogical that they are doing that, but we don't have any confirmation of those attacks. Let me tell you that, there are reports also from these semi-official agencies that President Pezeshkian is safe and in good health, and also that Khamenei, the supreme leader of the revolution, has been moved to a safer location before these attacks. So he's not in Tehran, and he's also safe and in good health.
And what about the Iranian people, Mohammed? Earlier you told us there was a bit of panic and chaos on the streets. Are people sheltering in place? How worried are they about what might happen next?
I think it's too early to talk about that. We can only talk about the traffic jams, and it seems that really there is a heavy traffic jam, unusual, behind me here in the streets, and that means people are trying to get to locations where they can be safer. We don't have details about whether some shelters have been prepared for people. It's a multi-million residents city. It's very difficult to, arrange that. It's going to take time. But the reports we hear from unofficial sources, semi-official sources, is that the government here, the authorities, are taking all precaution measures and also are preparing for a major reaction to what happened this morning.
Okay. Mohammed, thank you for now. I'll be back with you in just a few minutes. Let's go to Noor O'Day in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Noor, what more can you tell us about these reports of missiles being launched towards Israel?
Well, the Israeli army fully has issued a warning. The Home Front Command has issued also warnings and sirens telling residents of the Galilee and the Upper Galilee that missiles from Iran have been sighted and that they are headed towards Israel. Several warnings and messages have been received on people's phones. I can tell you right now, receiving in Hakarmiel, in Margiliot, in areas in northern Israel. And these are the same areas that we also saw Iran attacking in the previous confrontation in June of 2025. Right before those sirens went off and those warnings came to Israeli citizens, we also saw the Israeli military censor issue directives to the media about what they can and cannot report, about the restrictions that are imposed on reporting from inside Israel, which include any reporting on sites of impact, on movement of troops, on visual material.
All right, I'm going to turn this down a little bit. She's talking about Iran has threatened to retaliate and bomb Israel. So we're waiting for that to happen. And while we're here, I'll just give you a little update on, this is from the New York Times, and I'll just quote, here's the latest. President Trump announced on Saturday that the United States had launched a major attack on Iran as massive explosions resounded in the Iranian capital of Tehran. Mr. Trump said in an 8-minute video on social media that we had earlier on that the United States has begun, quote, major combat operations in Iran. So major combat operations, not just some bombing. Israel also said it was attacking Iran. But I've read from other sources that Israel doesn't want to carry the heavy load here because they've got other bombs they want to drop, other places. Residents in Iran reported seeing smoke rising from the district where the presidential palace and the National Security Council are located. The attacks began on Saturday morning, the first day of Iranian work week, as millions of people were at work and school. U.S. officials say they expect the latest strikes to be far more extensive than the American attack last June, which targeted 3 separate Iranian nuclear facilities. Dozens of U.S. strikes are being carried out by attack planes from bases and aircraft carriers around the Middle East, one U.S. official said. So what we're seeing here is not by no means what's happening. It was not immediately clear what the American and Israeli attacks had targeted so far, but a U.S. official said the campaign would last several days. The U.S. and Israeli officials spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss national security matters. And then the article goes on to give some background, and I'll just give it to you. The Middle East has been on edge for weeks. See, so they've been waiting for this because of Trump, because he's got a big mouth. He can't keep his big mouth shut. Middle East has been on edge for weeks as Mr. Trump has threatened military strikes against Iran unless its leaders agree to his demands, including reining in its nuclear program, which apparently this has nothing to do with that. Now, this has to do with regime change. In parallel, the U.S. military has built up its forces in the region, the largest American deployment there in decades. We are in the midst of the largest military deployment in the Middle East in decades. Explosions have been heard in other cities across Iran, including Isfahan and Karachi. I don't want to mispronounce things, so I'm not going to pronounce. According to the semi-official news agency Fars, and Israeli air raid sirens blared throughout Israel as it braced for potential retaliation. The crisis. The latest tensions with Iran began after Trump vowed in early January to aid anti-government demonstrators there, which he said that, and then he didn't do it. The Iranian government quelled those protests in a bloody crackdown. See, he speaks up, and then all these people got killed. That killed thousands, according to rights groups. So his big fat mouth, because he's so incompetent, has since both threatened to attack, Mr. Trump has since both threatened to attack Iran and sought to leverage the unrest in the country to reach a diplomatic solution. You guys, they were never trying to reach a diplomatic solution. That was all a cover-up while they brought all our planes and all of our military there so that they could do this because they want to have a regime change, because that's what Israel wants. And then they talk about the 12-year war last year in Israel, and and I don't really mean in any way to attack Israel in my verbiage. It's more like the leaders. It's just like, we have the United States. Well, we have a rotten leader right now. Israel has great, good people. They have a rotten leader. Although one guy that was on earlier was just going to, Israel supports this and respects this. And I don't know about that. I don't know. Because who knows? Because this is the Middle East. And when I was getting my master's degree, I took a class called Modern Middle East Warfare, or something like that. It was called something like that, the Modern Middle East. And I thought, oh, good. I'm going to study, what's been going on there in the past 20 years. Oh, no. Modern Middle East was like back in the 1800s they were talking about. Because there's been so much conflict there. And it's like you have to get your doctorate to just understand the political ramifications of what's going on. And certainly someone like Trump doesn't understand. So this is some interesting looking stuff. So I will turn this up and see what they're saying.
Feelings by looking like it is siding with the United States and with Israel in attacking a fellow Muslim country, but it does have, as I just mentioned, U.S. infrastructure here. There is U.S. military infrastructure in many countries around the region of the Gulf and the Middle East, including Qatar, including Saudi Arabia, etc. Many of these countries in recent days and weeks have said, we will not assist the United States. We will not assist Israel in any attack. And they are, I think, saying that to Iran to basically say, please don't attack us if there is any attack that takes place. But of course, for Jordan, if missiles from Iran start coming over Jordanian airspace, then it will most likely launch planes to try and shoot those down, or shoot those down in some form or other, whether that's planes or other kind of air defense systems. That's what we have seen in previous rounds of this conflict. We saw that back in the not last year when the Jordanians didn't launch their planes, but in the one before that, in 2024, Jordan did send up its air force to shoot down Iranian rockets and missiles that were coming over the skies of Jordan.
All right, Rory, thank you for now. We'll come back to you as the story develops, of course. Meanwhile, the U.S. ambassador to Israel has issued a statement praising the attacks on Iran. In a post on X, Mike Huckabee wrote, "Thank you, President of the United States, for strong American leadership to stop the killing and threats to Americans for the past 47 years. He says you gave them many chances to do it peacefully, and they said no. Even as I sit in the bullseye of it, I am grateful for a strong president and a strong America. Let's bring in our diplomatic editor, James Space, for more on this. The case for war. The Americans say, and President Trump also said, that Iran refused diplomacy. This is not true.
No, it's not true. And he said that Iran could never have a nuclear weapon. Well, Iran says they've never wanted a nuclear weapon at any stage. They want their peaceful right to enrichment. And we have this new information coming from the Omani foreign minister, someone who has been the broker of the recent talks, the facilitator of the most recent talks that took place in Geneva and all the previous rounds. And he's saying there was a big breakthrough in the last few hours, and that is that Iran had agreed not to keep a stockpile of enriched uranium that could potentially be used for a bomb. So, I mean, I think those sort of arguments coming as you see this attack launched by the United States, I think it'll raise all sorts of questions. I think the American people have not been prepared for war, but I think there are all sorts of legal questions.
Even though we saw this huge U.S. military buildup in the region, surely they must have anticipated that something was going to be happening. I mean, would they have sent out this armada, as President Trump called it, without doing anything?
But there weren't the debates on Capitol Hill that there were when there was previously a very big war. And the equivalent, the last time there was anything that big was 2003. And that's when the Americans, as you know, invaded Afghanistan in 2001. And literally from the moment they did that, they were preparing for over a year the public for a war. There has been no preparation for this. Yes, those of us that watch Al Jazeera, our viewers, will be aware of that big build-up. You watch American TV, lots of the American public will not be aware of this. On Capitol Hill, they will say, many will say this is illegal because Congress is supposed to authorise something as big as this. And let's not forget the little thing of international law. You need a Security Council resolution to do something like this, and they don't have that. And,
so
and Israel saying it's a preemptive action. I mean, there was no imminent attack coming from Iran.
So the case for war the Americans and the Israelis make is not a very convincing one. Did they even need to convince anyone of this? It seemed that they had their minds made up about going after
They absolutely had their minds up, and President Trump's narrative, which I'm sure people who watch his Truth Social and people in his MAGA base will agree with, but Iran refused the negotiations. No, Iran was involved actively in the negotiations. Just a few hours ago, you listened to the Omani foreign minister, they had new technical talks on Monday, just a few hours away, and full talks coming up in a week's time. So
I'm just going to say the whole negotiations to not have this happen was a farce.
Last time in June,
they were never serious about it. They were building up. They were planning this. They want
really
regime
you can treat
change.
the US when it's doing diplomacy.
I'm just going to quote again: the Constitution grants Congress alone the power to formally declare war. Something that even Republicans on Capitol Hill have sought to remind the president of this last week.
Israel and the US
in his video remarks, Trump indicated that he understood this operation to be war. So he is violating the Constitution and he's violating international law right now. There's no resolution.
In the coming days,
Trump indicated he understood this operation to be a war. Citing the possibility of American, quote, casualties that often happens in war. That's a quote from Trump. His declaration that, quote, no president was willing to do what I'm willing to do tonight, unquote, speaks to the likely unilateral decision-making from the White House. So he's clearly violating the United States Constitution, and he's clearly violating international law.
Mentioning
Him
Iran
and Netanyahu.
being a week
who
away
knows
from
what
building
the
a
Republicans
new
in Congress are going to do about
which is quite contradictory.
No
They said
backbone. They have no
after June, where they said they'd obliterated those words.
Put our troops in harm's way for an undeclared illegal war. And that's what it is.
Launch missiles
and what's
towards Europe
the
and the
game
United
plan?
States, and we know that the cap of the Iranian missiles is 2,000 kilometers.
He just had a major address to a joint session of Congress and the nation. And he didn't lay out any plan for why he would do this or why he should do this or why he shouldn't do it. And then if it's regime change they want, well, they muck that up as well. Because they're ready for it. They've moved
the Omanis are usually very discreet in diplomacy. So for a foreign minister to go on American television
from the area that we're bombing right now, that we're spending millions of dollars on bombs to bomb.
Netanyahu is again an appeal to
Iran.
the Iranian people. And you heard
And
that
to
from
what
President
end?
Trump. Now
And
is
it's
the
going to
time
be
to
long,
seize
and it's
control
going
of
to
your
be drawn
destiny.
out,
Do
and
not
it's
let
going to
it
be a
pass.
war,
Very
an
clearly
operation
think
of
there is a
war
phase
without
two to this
Right.
operation
without
that's going to happen
Congress being
organically
involved?
from the ground
on,
in
man.
Tehran and cities
on.
around Iran. But
what
are
happened to
Iranians going to rise
fix
up
the economy?
after?
So the strategy, it's almost
You know, what
as if
happened
the
to I'm not going
strategy
to
is
create
hope.
any
They're
long
pinning
wars.
their hopes also a
What
lot
is
on the
this,
Iranian
you
people.
guys?
I'm building on the
It's just, it's
on the
unbelievable to me.
momentum of
It's
the last
unbelievable, and I
protests.
keep
Is that
saying it's
momentum still there,
unbelievable.
Well,
So obviously,
there
I
are
don't know what
new,
that word means.
demonstrations and protests that started at the
here's this
universities.
dude who's,
But when
let's see
there
what he has
is a
to say.
war, things will differ. There is a complete, let me say, split over here between even those who want the system to collapse. Of course, there are some of them who are pro-intervention, but many of them, let me say the majority in Iran, are anti-intervention. If they want to bring down the system, they want to
but
bring
let me ask you this,
it down by
just to be a bit
themselves.
provocative here. How can they bring down the system, as you say, without help from outside?
Well, the idea is that this is how things. This is the debate, and this is how debate has been going on in Iran for years. That a national, or let me say, a patriotic opposition inside can pose a kind of threat to the system and can push the system towards reforms and changes. However, when things come from outside, it's different. And in general, the Iranian people view, you cannot really stereotype everyone, and you cannot just say 93 million
it's not a monolithic,
are all the same.
it's not
But at the end, this is a proud nation. It doesn't deal with things this way. So this is the main issue over here, and especially in the past weeks, we've been hearing a lot of stances coming from the United States, coming from Israel. The way how people are receiving these stances is different. It's mixed. And this system in Iran isn't an unpopular system. They still have their own bloc, a very solid bloc, ideological bloc.
James, you talked about international law. An operation like this, a mission like this would require the UN Security Council's approval. Where will this leave the United Nations, which is already embattled? I mean, the US has completely undermined the United Nations.
And sidelined it with President Trump and his Board of Peace. Yes, the UN will speak out against this, I'm sure, and the General Assembly, the majority of the countries will speak out against this. Of course, there won't be any action in the UN Security Council because there you have there you have the US with its veto power, which will stop any Security Council resolution to condemn this. It is, I think this is the other thing to state, this is a very bold action by President Trump. If he's launching this long-sustained campaign, which seems to be what he's saying in his social media post, and asking the US people to rise up. Now, President Trump in many ways has been a very lucky president, and he's been a very lucky president when it comes to military action. You look at what happened last year in June. He joined the Israelis, and it was a short operation to take out the nuclear program. It had a clear objective. I'm not sure they do have a clear objective here. And the word that comes to mind potentially is hubris. Is this going to be the military operation that doesn't go the way that Donald Trump wants? Because you're dealing with a very combustible situation in the Middle East, and you're dealing with a nation of more than 90 million people.
It is coming up to 8:30 GMT. If you're just joining us on Al Jazeera, we are covering a continuing coverage of the U.S. and Israel's attack on Iran. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced this operation against Iran. He's called it a major combat operation and warned that there will be likely American casualties. He's also called on Iran's Revolutionary Guard to lay down its arms or face certain death. Let's listen to President Trump.
The United States military began major combat operations in Iran. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people. Its menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas, and our allies throughout the world. For 47 years, the Iranian regime has chanted death to America and waged an unending campaign of bloodshed and mass murder targeting the United States, our troops, and the innocent people in many, many countries. Among the regime's very first acts was to back a violent takeover of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, holding dozens of American hostages for 444 days. In 1983, Iran's proxies carried out the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut that killed 241 American military personnel. In 2000, they knew and were probably involved with the attack on the USS Cole. Many died. Iranian forces killed and maimed hundreds of American service members in Iraq. The regime's proxies have continued to launch countless attacks against American forces stationed in the Middle East in recent years, as well as U.S. naval and commercial vessels in international shipping lanes. It's been mass terror, and we're not going to put up with it any longer.
Let's bring in our chief U.S. correspondent, Alan Fisher there. Alan, we heard there from President Trump about the operation. The objective clearly seems to be regime change in Iran.
That's right. He's essentially setting the table for what he believes will be a popular...
All right, I'm turning it down a little bit. I wanted to just reiterate, they showed a little bit of the, not the whole thing of Trump, which, I mean, he's going back to Jimmy Carter's era. To bring up old, things that Iran has done. I'll just quote again from the New York Times. Trump's call for Iran's Revolutionary Guard forces to surrender. I mean, what is he? Honestly, he's calling for Iran's Revolutionary Guard forces to surrender with the promise of complete immunity. What? And then the Times says that added a particularly unusual element to Trump's speech because the campaign appears to be largely an air operation. There is no one for the Guard to surrender to. No one to take them prisoner or to implement Trump's offer of total immunity. It may have simply been intended to sow doubt in the ranks if they believed the government was going to collapse. Okay, so Trump's calling for the Guard to lay down their weapons, but yet there's no one on the ground to surrender to. So it just, you guys, it just shows you how Trump's statements effectively, this is back to quote, Trump's statements effectively differentiate his war aims now from those last June. The targets back then were deeply buried nuclear facilities, most of them far from civilian populations. The sites that appear to have been hit today are the core of Iran's cities and its leadership compounds. And the goal, as described by Trump, is clearly different: to wipe out the leadership and make way for a revolution. It is a high-risk move. There are almost no successful examples in modern history of regime change through an air campaign. No, you have to go ground war. But administration officials, including Vice President J.D. Vance, have made it clear they imagine a swift campaign with no U.S. troops on the ground. So it doesn't even make sense. Trump's telling them to give up, and there's no one on the ground right now, unless there's someone on the ground that we don't know about, which I don't think so. And then here's an update from the New York Times. Senator Jack Reed, the top Democrat in the Senate Armed Services Committee, was not notified of the strikes in advance, his spokesman said. One of the key questions is whether the United States and Israel can suppress Iran's ability to strike back with its large supply of ballistic missiles and drones. Iran is the most equipped military presence in the Middle East. Iran has promised a major response and is likely to try to use a significant number of its missiles sooner rather than later. How much damage Iran can cause to American forces and to Israel will likely dictate how long this war goes on. Hi, Scott. Yes. I knocked us off the air by dropping my iPad. Oh, we'll have a commercial. I can't even get off of it. Oh, Lordy. I will do a refresh and probably have another commercial. Yeah, Scott, it first came across the wire. I first got a notice from New York Times that I'm going to play the commercial with the woman. She's actually passing gas. Al Jazeera Live. I'm sorry. Nothing is funny. First got a report that Israel had launched strikes against Iran. And then the next was that the United States had followed up with its own strikes against Iran. Then it came across that it was a joint United States and Iran attack. And that Iran is making moves to attack back. So that is going on right now. We'll see if this woman is, it's like, no, she's not finished yet. So here's, I'm going to the BBC. Israel says it has launched attacks on Iran as explosions reported in Tehran. And I've been reading from the New York Times, which New York Times has this gigantic headline: U.S. and Israel strike Iran. And Trump has come out and talked about why we're doing this. And he's brought up like old conflicts, like Jimmy Carter, conflicts. And, this is a violation of the United States Constitution because he hasn't conferred with members of the Congress. Only Congress can declare war. Trump has already gone on to say this is a war, that this is not just a quick military action, that we are at war with Iran. Why? I have no idea, because he hasn't made a case. He had all the time in the world in the longest speech, joint session of Congress, State of the Union address, didn't address this at all. I've been live on Al Jazeera, trying to get back to the Al Jazeera feed, which is pretty good. Here's another commercial. It's pretty good because they've got multiple cameras set up in various countries. Up here it says, up above, it says Trump, U.S. Israel launch attack on Iran is an effort to eliminate the regime. Here's, good, we've got some, I'll turn this up. Here's
the Americans and the Israelis, and at the same time, it gives the Iranian establishment, in case this regime was able to stay, the establishment was able to preserve itself and end this war while they are there, then the mission has failed. However, what are the Iranians doing in order to combat this situation? Absolutely, they are deriving conclusions from the last war. Absolutely, they have several contingency plans, and this is what they've been saying.
What do you see as the difference between this campaign and the previous one, the one in June 2024?
This is starting immediately in an American-Israeli joint war. In the last one, it was an Israeli war. And
even though it was the Israelis who announced the attack in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the end, this is an American-Israeli joint attack. In the 2025 war, it was just Israeli. And Also, it was limited to some areas. They hit in Tehran, they hit in towards mainly the western and the central parts. Now we're seeing
they're striking government targets also.
Yeah, and towards the east also, towards southeast. So it's the American capabilities are huge. So now this is the difference here. However, how the impact is going to be on the ground, this is the big question. We're in the first hours of a war that started and no one knows how it's going to end. And how many days will it take, or how many weeks it's going to take,
Isn't
or
that
how many
like
months
with
it's
every
going to
war?
take. So it's really very complicated, even for us as people who've been covering Iran. We're not really capable of really catching
zooming out and seeing what happens. All right, gentlemen, I have now the translated Prime Minister Netanyahu soundbite. Let's listen to what he said.
Here's Netanyahu.
سنعود إليك لنستمع الآن إلى بنيامين نتنياهو رئيس الوزراء الإسرائيلي.
We will listen to what the Israeli Prime Minister, who says that the terrorist Iranian regime cannot be allowed to possess nuclear weapons, which will pose a threat to the entire humanity. Israel cannot be allowed to possess the nuclear power. The terrorist Iranian regime cannot pose a threat to the entire humanity. This is the statement by the Israeli Prime Minister. We, Israel, together with the United States, have started a joint operation, Operation Lion's Roar, which aims at eliminating Iran's existential threat to our nation. The oppressive regime of Iran poses a threat to us, and they always chant death to Israel and death to the United States. To the Iranian people we say, you must remove this regime. The aim of this joint operation is to eliminate the existential threat by Iran, as the Iranian regime has channeled all the country's resources to wipe off Israel from the map and then target the United States. Thousands of Iranians have taken to the streets. Now Israel and the United States are calling upon the Iranian people to take the matter into their own hands. This Operation Lion's Roar, we will continue to operate, and we expect to suffer massive losses. However, we draw strength from our people, as since the renaissance operations and process have started, we have been joining hands. That's why I call on the Israeli people to abide by the home front instructions, simply because these are life-saving instructions, and the military operations is directly linked to that. If we had not moved, we would have a nuke-powered Iran. They will have been possessed thousands of nuclear-powered missiles. Therefore, we had no option but to start this battle. The joint operation by Israel and the United States has started. And again, I address the Iranian people, the Iranian army. You are not our enemy. We are not your enemy. Our common enemy is the oppressive tyrant regime that have taken illegal possession of your lives. They have taken illegal possession of your resources and plunged your country. I am working in close coordination with the President of the United States, and every army man who lays down his arm will be offered safe exit. It is your opportunity, the Iranian army, the Iranian people, it is your opportunity to have a new Iran, a free, liberated Iran. Hold your heads high. Our forces and the forces of the free world have come to you to give you a helping hand. We, together with the United States, will work for peace and prosperity in this region. And here I would like to thank my friend, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, the U.S. Army. The President Trump is not only a friend of Israel in the White House, but he is a firm leader, a leader of the free world. He is working for the best interest of the entire world. We will bring the broader light of freedom to the whole world. Again, I salute the personnel of the Israeli army, the Air Force, the Mossad, civil defense, and rescue teams. I salute you for your capabilities, your efficiency, and make no mistakes, the entire nation is behind you. The entire nation is praying for your victory. 2005 years ago, the old Persian Empire had the same goal to exterminate our nation, yet Mordecai, the king, and in these glorious feast days, they stood up, and the tyrant ruler of Persia, Cyrus, had fallen. Equally, the current criminal regime of Iran will fall. We are crying out this lion's roar. We are standing tall as...
That was Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking to Israelis after Israel and the United States launched a joint attack on Iran. Prime Minister Netanyahu saying that this campaign will let...
All right, so I got an update. The Department of Defense is calling these strikes, are you ready? Quote, Operation Epic Fury. Operation Epic Fury. First of all, I don't know. There's no first of all. It's like they're just ridiculously dumb.
The fact that
I'm
the
just saying it, they're
Iranians
dumb.
and
And then the next update, and this is from the New York Times, loud booms are heard in Jerusalem, likely from interceptions of incoming missiles. And they're also going to be launching attacks because they have lots of, Iran has lots of missiles on our ships and our military sites in the area. Air raid sirens are continuing to sound in Jerusalem and across Israel, warning of incoming Iranian attacks. No immediate reports or casualties of damage.
It seems that they are preparing for this.
Okay. Now, we're also hearing from Iran's allies in the regions, including the Houthis in Yemen. Will they get involved in this
Well,
conflict?
at least this is what we are hearing right now, reports that they are going to be part of this. And now, how are they going to be part of this? Is it going to be by expressing solidarity, or is it going to be by closing the straits, or is it going to be by launching rockets towards Israel? These are big questions. Also, in the past few weeks, we've had a kind of an ascending rhetoric coming from Iraqi militias allied to Iran. Mm-hmm. The only ones who we didn't have a clear picture from whether they are going to be part of this are Hezbollah in Lebanon. Mm-hmm.
All right, we will keep a close eye on that, of course. Let's further analyze these latest developments.
So at the same time, Israel has been attacking Hezbollah and Lebanon, and so this has the possibilities of having Hezbollah in Iraq begin to help join together with Iran and attack Israel, and then therefore we will be caught in the middle there. This guy is from
Netanyahu will declare victory.
He is an Israeli political analyst. He's very, how do I say it? I don't even know if that's the right term. Right wing. He's very pro-war. He's very, we're going to win. This is a great thing. Everybody's for this.
Now he is promising
I'll just play a little bit of it, but I don't like him
because he is the angel who will save the Iranian people from their evil regime, as President Trump said. But I am quite sure that the Israelis, and this is about 50% of the Jewish population, don't take him seriously. He wasn't able to declare victory after the massacre in Gaza and the thousands of victims in Israel. There are still people in the north that are not back to their homes, that have been now the Hezbollah or Iran. We don't even know for sure where those missiles are coming from. But what his total victory is, of course, changing the agenda. There was supposed to be a major demonstration in Jerusalem against his government, corrupted government. And now, of course, a few minutes ago, I had here in one of the suburbs of Tel Aviv, another siren, and people are stuck at home. But his message that you've been translating very carefully was that this is necessary, that we have to sacrifice our well-being. We have to go back to give up traveling outside of Israel, because this is our mission. Now, symbolically, next week, the Jewish people are going to celebrate the holiday of Purim, where the Jewish people manipulated the Persian regime. And I'm sure that we're going to hear more about it. And Netanyahu does what he is doing best in the last 25 and more years, to brainwash people that there is no option other than perpetuate the war against our neighbors. And he will change the Middle East, and he can manipulate the President of the United States. And to remind you, Polly, he succeeded to convince Trump in his first term in the White House to pull out of a good, reasonable agreement with Iran. But
and it was just last week also that Netanyahu traveled to Washington, presumably to convince President Trump once again to enter into this war with Israel. Mohanad Seloum, let me come to you next now. The goals of this U.S.-Israeli operation have been...
All right, so I misjudged. The dude does not like Netanyahu. The dude says Netanyahu hasn't done his job. And Netanyahu's doing this because he wants to win re-election, and Netanyahu manipulates Trump. And Netanyahu was here a couple of weeks ago, and it was all hush-hush. We didn't hear a word about what they talked about. Well, obviously they're doing this. Obviously Netanyahu's there whispering to Trump's ear, and Trump's going, So,
he hasn't been injured,
that's the story, my friends.
President Pezeshkian,
we're at
from
war.
what we understand.
Yeah, well, these are unconfirmed reports. These people are in hiding at the moment, and there is no official confirmation. And even the Iranian
there's no official confirmation on if anybody in the regime has been killed. They said that they struck the palace and government buildings, but that the president, for sure, President of Iran, was not there. And the Ayatollah Khomeini, we're not sure where he is right now, but he wasn't there. So that could change.
Regime change in Iran. It's not only about Israel. I mean,
he's talking about regime change here.
Is it a U.S.-led operation? Well, obviously the U.S. is a powerful, but the Israelis surely must have convinced them and must have had a big role in this as well.
Well, obviously, they
were
have
behind
been,
it. Well,
yeah, they have been trying to do this, and Netanyahu went himself to D.C. Trying to convince President Trump to do that. But it is the U.S. doing this. Israel on its own cannot change the regime in Iran. It is the U.S. Army doing this, and also the U.S. have been very much intentional with this. They have moved in. This armada of carriers, F-22s, everything, and they are attacking Iran as we speak now.
Right, but what imminent threat did Iran pose to the U.S. for the U.S. to attack it in this way? This is what President Trump said in his speech, that Iran posed an imminent threat. What was the threat?
Well, they haven't laid out bare out there, but they're saying that the missiles, the nuclear, and the ballistic system, all these together, they are posing a threat not to the U.S. itself, but to the U.S. interests in the region
of course,
and its allies. And Iran did not hesitate to use that. But let's be clear, this, if you like, this conflict between the U.S. and Iran has been going on for years now. And the Iranian side has been very much keyed on keeping its nuclear systems, and they have been going on, with different U.S. administrations trying to find a middle ground and a solution, but it never happened. Now the U.S. is reaching the last limit, especially with, the zero game, if you like, ideas of President Trump, saying that you have to give up on everything. We will not accept anything below that. And Iran is saying that it's more dangerous to give up everything than go into war. So the Iranians went for war because it's less costly for them than giving up on their nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles.
Akiva Eldar in Tel Aviv, what about the costs for Israel? In the last few years, Israel has been engaged in a war in Gaza, a genocide in Gaza. It's been engaged in a war against Hezbollah in Lebanon, twice now against Iran. Isn't this costing Israel and the Israelis as well?
Yeah, it costs not only financially with its billions of dollars. Maybe Netanyahu is hoping that his friend over there, White House, that is not very eager to spend money on other countries or other people. Maybe he believes that he will be also able to convince him to pay those bills. But more than that, you look at the Israeli people, the average Israeli is depressed. He doesn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. The only tunnels we know is the tunnels in Gaza that we destroyed. People are stuck at home. They are not able. Israel is becoming an isolated island more than before. And I think that psychological effect, at least 1/3 of the Israelis, according to research that has been done in the United States, are in a kind of post-trauma. And I see my grandchildren, I see my neighbors, people going with their heads down. They don't see any end to this. And Netanyahu, as we know, his hero is Winston Churchill. What he's promising us is just blood, sweat, and tears. And I think that the Israeli economy can deal with it. But what is happening is that in Israel, for the first time this year, we have negative immigration. Good people are leaving the country. But I want to go for a minute to the message of Netanyahu that he wants to put order in the Middle East, new Middle East. What we see is that when the Palestinian Authority and the Peace Council is willing to put order in Gaza, Netanyahu is doing everything to undermine it. And if he was willing to move, maybe it would isolate Iran further and maybe bring the regime down.
All right, I wanted to just give you an update from the New York Times, and then I'm going to try to wrap up here because this is just the beginning of the conflict and of what Trump calls a war. And I'll be back tomorrow. I'm going to create a graphic and post this at the top of my feed, of my channel. But I want to quote from the New York Times. This is the latest. Videos verified by the New York Times show strikes in an area of Tehran that houses the presidential palace and Iran's National Security Council, among other important government buildings. Another video shows a strike near Iran's Ministry of Intelligence. A central goal of the first wave of strikes in Iran was to hit as many leaders as possible, according to 3 Israeli security officials familiar with the operation. The officials said that, similar to previous strikes in June of last year by the United States, planners took into account that they would manage to achieve at least some degree of surprise. How so? How the F so? I mean, we knew this was coming. All the ships were there. They calculated that if they wanted to kill senior Iranian officials, they had to try to hit them in the first round of strikes. Afterward, it is highly unlikely that more precautions would be taken to protect the leadership. I think the leadership was already protected, frankly. And then here's the latest update 2 minutes ago. So far, few members of Congress have awoken to news of the strikes on Iran. But Senator Ruben Gallego of Arizona, a Democrat and former Marine who served in Iraq, said on social media early Saturday that the United States, quote, can support the democracy movement and the Iranian people without sending our troops to die. He added that Americans should not have to, quote, pay the ultimate price for regime change and a war that hasn't been explained or justified to the American people. And then here's another update. While President Trump recited a litany of Iranian attacks on American interests that go back to the Jimmy Carter administration, Trump made little effort to argue that any immediate threat had prompted the latest U.S.-Israeli strikes. Trump repeated the allegation he made in the State of the Union address that Iran was working on missiles that could soon reach the United States. But the Defense Intelligence Agency had concluded in a 2025 report that no decision had been made by the Iranian government to pursue an intercontinental ballistic missile. While Trump repeated that Iran would never be permitted to obtain nuclear weapons, he did not attempt to make the case that Iran was closer to producing one. But now, my friends, it's not about the missiles. It's not about the nuclear weapons. It's about a regime change. He wants regime change. So, and he made that clear, and Netanyahu made it clear. They want, and Trump's not making any sense. All right, I'm just telling you. He's telling the guard in Iran to lay down their arms and surrender. And we have nobody on the ground there for them to surrender to, because right now we're just bombing. So, I mean, this is like the beginning. So that's what's going on. I'm Gloria Moraga. This is political news. I've been here for at least more than an hour. And I'm going to wrap up, post this so you can watch a replay of it. And then I will be back sometime tomorrow to give an update on what's going on. Congress has not been involved in this at all. It's the United States Constitution requires that only Congress can officially wage war. Trump is thwarting that. He's also thwarting any kind of international support, something that the Bush administration has ill-conceived as some of what George Bush did. At least he had a coalition of backers of other countries to back us so that we were not out there alone. There's that. And so let's just say the proverbial shit will hit the fan tomorrow when Congress starts waking up and reacting to some of this. So I want to be around and recording sound bites from Congress to give it to you. So here's a report.
Going off. We were standing here, people on their smartphones here on the Corniche, tourists still out and about. all of their phones went off at the same time, warning of the threat of incoming missiles. Now, earlier, an official source in the country, Ministry of Defense, confirmed to Al Jazeera that an Iranian missile was shot down using Patriot systems. Of course, Patriot defense systems were mobilized in multiple numbers ahead of this invasion or ahead of this attack on Iran by the United States to multiple friendly countries all around the region. And that seems to be taking part in this conflict now, though they are now serving their purpose. Just within an hour of that confirmation by the Defense Ministry, the U.S. Embassy had issued a warning saying missile incoming, imminent missile strikes, duck and cover until further notice, continue to shelter in place. So that warning followed by this information about the defense, the Patriot defense systems shooting down an incoming missile. The airspace around Qatar, UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, all these airspaces have been closed. Since we've been out here, we've seen a few flights in the air in the past hour. Those were perhaps the last flights to come in and out of Doha, perhaps for some time. That U.S. warning, that U.S. Embassy warning, telling people to shelter in place, but also to have food and water supplies, to have a plan to exit. There seems to be this urgency from the U.S. Embassy to suggest that this may be a protracted event.
There you go.
So, yeah, the emergency alert we all got on our phones just a short while ago here in Qatar from the Qatari authorities telling everyone here in Doha to stay away from military installations. As you said, a huge U.S. military base in Doha. Difficult to say what is going to be the scope of Iran's retaliation, isn't it, Zain?
Well, I can tell you from reporting I've done in the past in Iran for years, whenever you speak to officials on the ground, whenever you speak to any analysts, really anyone that is connected to the government or the IRGC or the military establishment or the clerical system of government in any way, they continue to say that everyone around their country are all friendly neighboring countries. They want to maintain friendly ties, but they continue to point out that they all host U.S. bases, and if Iran is attacked, there's been an admittance by a number of analysts and officials that they know that a full-scale U.S. invasion is something that Iran is unlikely to be able to combat strictly because of the asymmetry of military power on the U.S. side. But they say that if the United States is going to decide to change the Iranian landscape, if Iran is going to have its map changed, it will change the map of the region. So what we are worried about now is that Iran will retaliate in the way that it has been promising all along, that if it is attacked, it will attack every U.S. ally in the region.
Indeed.
And that is something that they have gone on record to say for years.
Qatar's airspace has been closed. Bahrain's airspace also closed. We are looking on the left-hand side of our screen there of the explosion in Bahrain. And in Qatar, this was the missile that was intercepted earlier. It looks like in Bahrain, there has been some sort of explosion. Unclear as to whether this is something that was intercepted or it made impact, Zain.
I mean, it is going to take time to figure out exactly the details of what is being attacked, what is being hit. There is some concern about the precision of Iranian missiles. There has been concern about these things in the past. But Bahrain is home to the U.S. Fifth Fleet. Qatar is home to the U.S. Central Command headquarters in the region. So as far as Iran is concerned, with the U.S. and Israel firing the first shot in this latest go-around, everything is now probably fair game.
All right, so what they're basically bottom line saying as I wrap up is Iran knows it's got to hit hard right now after the initial attack by Israel and the United States. So they have got weapons that can hit countries all nearby. So they're hitting every U.S. military base and all of U.S. allies in the area, because they know they can't win a ground war. That's what he was saying. Whereas in the United States, I mean, we don't want a ground war, do we? I don't. I don't want U.S. military on the ground. But apparently, Trump and J.D. Vance and others think that this can be quick and fast, and we can do this quickly. But I don't know how quickly, because Iran has the largest military force in the Middle East, so they're not to be trifled with. And if Iraq gets involved, then it's a whole another ballgame. So I am Gloria Moraga. This is Political News. We are at war, according to Donald Trump, who has come out and said so. And I will post this live video, and you guys can watch it back if you need more information. But got a lot of help here from Al Jazeera English, and they've got the best the cameras in the area on all the areas surrounding what's being bombed. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back in a couple of hours after I catch some sleep. Gloria Moraga, Political News. Please subscribe.